Welcome to Journey to Esquire, the podcast. I'm Jocelyn Hardrick, founder and president of Diversity Access Pipeline, Inc., the company behind this podcast and other great programs, like Journey to Esquire Scholarship and Leadership Program, which provides $2,000 cash scholarships to third-year law students and internships to second-year law students, along with leadership training and mentors. And Journey to Esquire, the blog, which provides insightful articles to help navigate you through law school and beyond. Find out more on our website, www.journeytoesquire.com. Hi, it's Jocelyn Hardrick, and welcome back to Journey to Esquire, the podcast. I'm so excited today. We have a great guest, Sherriee Detzler, and she's going to share her journey to Esquire. But before we talk about her journey, let's talk about what she's doing now. So Sherrie's an educator, attorney, coach, change agent, and team leader. Her passion is mentoring and coaching law students to help them prepare for and pass the bar exam. In partnership with law schools and professors across the country, she's worked in the development of superior content and materials for both live and e-learning curriculums, resulting in increased bar passage rates for nearly 10,000 students annually. That's a lot of impact. She considers herself very fortunate to be able to use her education and experience to support the growth, development, and success of new attorneys at the onset of their careers, and she's elated to be a part of the AccessLex Institute team and furthering the mission of empowering the next generation of lawyers. I love that about Sherriee. I've met her through AccessLex and as a professor at my law school, and she is so passionate, and she shares the enthusiasm of Journey to Esquire and really creating access for law students and helping them on their journey. So let's hear about your journey, Sherriee. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Professor Hardrick. Welcome, and thank you for having me. I feel quite honored to be here, and I'm very excited to share my journey. It's been a fun journey, and it continues. Every day is just more on in the step to wherever I may go.
Yeah, that's what's great about being a lawyer, isn't it? It's like, it's not just one thing. It's a set of skills that you really can apply to a lot of different things. So Tell us, why did you decide to become a lawyer?
Well, my desire to become a lawyer began when I was just a child. I have been blessed to have a developmentally disabled sister who I became her advocate. We are close in age, and I became her advocate from the time we could probably walk. We are 2 of 9 children, so we have to do a lot of fighting and advocacy during our upbringing. And so I never knew for sure whether or not I would continue on to become a lawyer. So I started out in small steps. And my first bit was going to the community college. And that's where I received my associate's degree as a legal assistant. Thereafter, I began my work as a legal assistant in a law firm, a very prominent law firm in my area in Metro Detroit. And my mentor was so inspiring to me. And just to watch the attorneys in our firm, it really motivated me to go on to get my bachelor's degree. And there, I was never quite certain that I would make it to law school. I always aspired to go to law school. And working in the law firm, I felt like I was doing the work of an attorney, but I never, ever quite knew if I would make it to law school, because I waited until after I graduated from high school. I became a mom. I was married, I was working, and then I decided to start going to community college. So I was later in life. And all this time, each step that I took, I just felt very blessed to have achieved an associate's degree, achieved a bachelor's degree. So when I was accepted into law school, there was nothing stopping me. Although from start of community college to completion of law school, it was 14 and a half years going part-time at night. It was so well worth it.
Yeah, I have a lot of students who share your story. I have friends and family who've asked me, is it too late? Is this going to take forever? Is it worth it? So I'm so glad you're sharing your story. So 14 and a half years from beginning to end. But let's go back a little bit. What was your law school application process like, especially since you are married, you have kids, so that's going to impact where you can apply, where you can go, and it sounds like you were looking for part-time opportunities as well.
That is absolutely correct. I knew that part-time was the only way in which I could go because I had to support my family. Yes, I'm married, and yes, I am a mom, and that was first on my vocation list. So everything else had to fall into line behind that. So my application process was limited because at that time there were only a few part-time programs in my area. So I did the long stretch. I reached out and I applied to all that had the programming that I could within my geographic area because I knew I couldn't move. My family and my roots were planted here in Metro Detroit. So my applications, I really, really tried hard to do well on my LSAT. In fact, I pushed back to the next offering of the LSAT because I just didn't feel prepared enough. I knew I needed to score well in order to get the law school that I wanted to get into, and which I did. But in order to do that, I needed more time to prepare. It was not anything that I I knew I was pushing back a couple of months, but it wasn't impacting me severely in any way, shape, or form. And by doing that, I was able to achieve the score to get into Wayne State Law School. And that's where I ended up ultimately going and graduating from.
Oh, excellent. So that's good to know. A lot of students think they take the LSAT and they don't do well, and that's it. It's like you're not stuck with that. You can
Yeah.
also postpone it if you don't feel ready. And now, of course, these young folks have all kinds of options, right? I just saw they got rid of it and it's back on, but now they're letting you do it remote or at a specific location and digital, or you have some more options than we did. I remember having to go to a law school, physically sit down with a piece of paper, right? And all these rules about the timers and this and trying to do it. It's such a different world now. But that's good to know. And since you're in the law school world, do you have any tips for people um, who are thinking about taking the LSAT, like how to time that out?
Well, I always encourage students because I still get this question quite often. Absolutely. You need to have a course in order to help you adequately prepare for the LSAT. The LSAT was probably the hardest exam that I've ever taken, and I'm including the multi-state professional responsibility and the bar exam. The LSAT was very difficult for me, and so I was able to find at my university a prep course that was offered there at a very reasonable cost. And so every Saturday for 6 weeks, I went to a class to learn how to actually take the LSAT. It's not a gauge of your knowledge of anything in my book. It's more of a gauge of your ability to problem solve. And so the LSAT was a very difficult exam. And by doing that and then practice, that's how you prepare for the LSAT. I don't think it's an exam that you can rush, nor do I think it's an exam that you can just skate by. You really have to prepare, and by doing repetitive problems and in all of the areas that they test on the LSAT, I think that's how you become proficient to do well on that score and that particular exam.
Yeah, and it's important that particularly younger people who are graduating high school and college now understand that, because they're doing less and less of that in undergraduate and in high school. We remember when we had to learn cursive
Oh yeah.
to do the multiple, your learn your multiples, and we had to memorize and we had to recite things, and right, and kids coming up now, even my kids in school, they're not doing that as much. So it becomes like an even bigger challenge for people to
I
really
agree.
realize that. Yeah.
And plus, now that the LSAT is online, that's a whole different dynamic of learning as well,
Yeah,
with
it is.
timing and practice. And to take a test online compared to what the norm has been, and that's paper and pencil, right? I think the challenges are very, very real, and all the more reason to practice and really get yourself prepared.
Yeah, that's important. So, did you enjoy law school at Wayne State?
I loved my law school experience. Absolutely loved it, even though it was challenging because I would work from 7:30 in the morning until 4:30 in the afternoon, leave the firm, and I didn't take lunch most of the time. Leave the firm, drive an hour to Detroit to Wayne State because my classes started at 6:10. I always planned to get there though by 5:30 so that I could socialize with my colleagues. I went to law school with some incredible professionals that were going to law school as a second career. And so there were ER nurses, architects, and I still see my law school pals to this day. We get together as often as we can. So it was very important to me to have that social aspect in conjunction with my law school journey because going to school part-time in the evening, while it is supposed to be part-time, it's a lot of work. It's just a lot of work and working full-time too. So it's doable. And I guess because your time is so precious that you make the most of it, right? So I did enjoy my journey in law school
That's
for
right.
sure.
How old were your kids around this time? Because that's going to be a concern. Your schedule sounds like, okay, when do you sleep?
Exactly. And who took care of my son? I just have one child. He's an adult. Obviously, he's a parent now as well. But I made the decision that when I was accepted to school, accepted to Wayne State, that I pushed back to begin in the fall because they accepted during January admission and the fall at the time when I went to law school. I pushed back to begin in the fall because my son was going to get his driver's license. And I had, at that time, my mom and my in laws lived very close by. My husband worked nights. So I made sure that my son could drive to either of his grandparents for dinner every night while I was in law school because I went to school Monday through Thursday evening. Friday night was my free night. So that was my schedule. And my son, I didn't miss practices or not practices, but sporting events that were on weekends or school breaks. But I always made sure that, Friday night was our dinner night together, just he and I. He could choose whatever he liked. And then on the weekends, while I studied most all of the weekend, I also made time for family.
Oh, nice. So he was a teenager. So that sometimes at least they can intellectually kind of get it, like mom has homework. It's
To
not just
this
me.
day, he will tell me that I was probably an inspiration to him.
Mm.
He now has his daughter going off to college next year. So he will say to her, "Oh, you should have seen my mom studying. I remember her watching me play football with law books in her lap."
Oh,
And
wow.
that's absolutely true.
So
I
you
would
have a
agree.
granddaughter going to college.
I
Oh,
do.
exciting, exciting. Talking about changing the legacy of your family, right? Because
Yeah.
you know, when they see that, right, it just becomes more possible, and then they can choose if that's
They
something they
can.
want to pursue. Hmm.
Absolutely. And I was one of nine children. And as I said, my sister, who lives with me now, she was not going to be a college candidate. And before me, there were no college students. None of my siblings had gone to college. So I was first generation college and law school. And that was certainly challenging, but certainly rewarding as well.
Yeah, you have to figure out your own path. You really do. And many of our students in the program are first generation college and law student, and we even had one first generation high school graduate. And so, as someone who watched my mom go to community college, so I wasn't first generation college, but watching her, when I was in elementary school, same situation. She had 4 kids. She was a single mom and she was working full time and going to school and getting honors. I'm like, I have no excuse. I
You sound
cannot
like my
complain.
son. He will tell
Yeah,
everybody, I watched my mom go to college all my life. And
yeah.
it's true. From the time he started kindergarten, that's when I started going to the community college. So he
Wow. Yeah.
he grew up with me having a book in my hand.
Yeah, for people who come from families where education is really important, it's good to have those visuals. But for a lot of people in your situation, yeah, that schedule is intimidating. It's a lot of work, and so they're trying to figure out how they're going to balance it out. So you can be an inspiration for them now. So now you had been working for a law firm while you were in law school. So what was your job search like after law school? Did you stay at that law firm or did you go somewhere else?
No, actually, I did leave the law firm my second year of law school. Because remember that schedule I told you about, working at 7:30 in the morning until 4:30, going to school from 6 until 9:30, getting home at 10:30 at night. That became really challenging to me. And I knew that I couldn't keep that up for long. And I always feared when I left the practice of law that I'd get back into the practice of law, because I went from being a legal assistant at a very busy law firm to becoming a sales rep, if you will, for a bar review company at the time. It was a director of legal education, but because I hadn't yet graduated from law school, I was an assistant director. And so that's when I first experienced working with law students. Here I am, a law student myself, but I was able to go into other law schools other than my own and work with students to help them choose their bar review company. And so I left the law firm and started working full-time in this other industry. And I never considered myself a salesperson. I was more of a legal educator, sharing what I knew about the bar exam and the bar review courses available.
Oh, that's interesting. So then after law school, did you end up staying with them or did you take another path?
I said I would stay for 1 year, and I stayed 24 years. But I also did a lot of pro bono work throughout my career. I dedicated myself to doing not only work through the Bar Association and working, but with the epidemic that we have in our society of addiction and the stigma around that, I became educated with alternate treatment courts. So I pursued additional education to learn about the alternates to incarceration. So in the criminal arena, I kind of became an expert with the treatment courts, or the specialty courts as they call them here in Michigan. And I worked on a specialty court for over 11 years as in various capacities, but as a capacity as a defense attorney.
Oh,
And I've
wow.
also done pro bono work with domestic violence shelters in our area, in the family law arena. And because of my work as a legal assistant in a general practice firm, I was able to touch various areas throughout, the general practice of law. And I've given back in those particular areas and done work in almost all of them.
That's outstanding. And that's really important for people to understand. Just because you choose one path doesn't mean it forecloses all these other paths. Pro bono is an excellent way to get especially litigation experience if you're not able to do it in your full-time job.
Absolutely. Another way, and I'll just point this out, I mentioned my association with the Bar Association. When several years ago, when the legal economy pretty much tanked, there were a lot of law students, and because of my job, I knew these law students that were graduating with no foundation in which to practice law and no job prospects. I was fortunate enough to be able to take a good number of these students. Over 20 students I mentored as new attorneys, introducing them to the criminal law practice, introducing them to the court system, the family law practice. So through my bar association and mentoring these young lawyers, I was able to kind of practice in various areas as well, being their mentor, helping them getting ready for their first trials, sitting second chair on their first trials. So this was all experience that I gained as a legal assistant, built upon it in my profession in doing pro bono work, and then was able to give back through a mentorship. And so I've always kept my foot in that courtroom door as well, just because you just never know when your services are going to be needed. And frankly, I feel so blessed to be a licensed attorney that if I can step up and step in to help another person, whether it's a law student getting through the bar exam or someone with a legal matter that can't afford or has no accessibility to the justice system, I think that's what we need to do as lawyers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's our ideals: inclusion, diversity, equity, access, and leadership. So you're touching on all those different aspects of our program. So, you mentioned that you're a licensed attorney, but I know you've been licensed in more than one jurisdiction as part of your role with the bar prep company. How many licenses do you have?
Well, actually, my state license is only in Michigan. I
Okay.
am licensed in the federal courts. I've also been sworn into the United States Supreme Court, which was quite an honor.
Oh, nice. I did that as well. Were you able to do that in person?
I
Yes,
was.
wasn't it
In
outstanding?
fact, Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, I was her last group that was sworn in, and we were en blanc. All justices were sitting there when I was sworn in, and that was pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I got sworn in during oral arguments, so everyone was there. Justice Ginsburg was still on the bench. Chief Justice Roberts, addressed us, and it was a full house because it was a really contentious oral argument. And it was what an amazing process. I mean, and my
It,
husband got to come and we had breakfast and everything. It was really nice.
oh, that is nice. It
Yeah.
is such a honor to get that, to be sworn in there. It's just huge. And when you tell your kids that, I can't wait for their expo. I mean, my grandchildren think that that is the coolest thing ever.
Oh, nice. Yeah, well, my son is like not impressed with me because I write all these books. He's like, oh, another book? Yeah, yeah, that's just mommy doing her thing. But it's also nice because we are ready to go to the Supreme Court if some case needs help, like the pro bono work you're doing. Sometimes there's cases that just aren't attractive to any attorney who kind of regularly does that. And so we're ready, right, to go argue and we'll get that experience and go because so pro se individuals cannot represent themselves in Supreme Court. So they have to have an attorney with them. So that's another motivation. I mean, we enjoyed it and it's an honor, but there is a practical part to that, right? The more people who are admitted, the more people can be represented. So that's
That
just
is true.
outstanding. Yeah. So, okay, now what advice do you have for new and future law students? I'm sure you have a bunch.
Well, I never sell yourself short. I think the biggest thing that I can advise pre-law students is if you want to go to law school, you can make it happen. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of energy, but reach out to people around you. Everyone wants you to succeed. So if you're not sure where to start, this is where my passion lies now, being in the position I am with AccessLex Institute. We're the largest nonprofit supporting legal education, including pre-law. And so we really thrive on that. And so we have resources for those students that don't know where to start, for a first generation college student that has no idea where to even begin to start that application process. So there's a lot of resources out there. The first one I would recommend is start at your undergraduate school, or if you have a law school in mind that's close by, go visit them. Go to the admissions office. Everyone wants you to go to law school. And if that's what your passion is, you can have it. It's just finding the way in which to get there.
Yeah, that's very true. And the admissions office loves when prospective students come in because the face to face is the best way, right, to sell you on the ideas and the programs and making it work. So let's talk about AccessLex Institute. So I first heard of it, I think, at the AALS conference. The professors all over America joined this organization and they have an annual conference. And I went to one of the sessions where AccessLex Institute was talking about the studies they've done to help law students, studies they've done for bar exam. And then the more I looked into it, the more I was like, wow, they offer a lot of outstanding programming. A lot of it is free. And I know you've recently kind of reorganized some of it. So walk us through from, the pre-law person all the way up to taking the bar exam. What are the offerings of AccessLex Institute?
Oh, wow. We have a lot. Well, starting out, in addition to the academic support as well as the bar support resources, success resources, we have the financial success resources. So, starting out at pre law, we have our program called Max for pre law. The Max is like a personal finance program. We have lessons, we have worksheets, we have professionals that are licensed in the financial aspect to find out how to get through law school financially and how to plan for that. So The Max programs are incredible. Pre-law as well as law student Max programming. We have lessons, and again, the coaches are phenomenal. We have pre-law as well as, first year law student academic success resources. These are also free. Max is free. If you go to the askedna.org or go to the AccessLex.org website, you'll find all these resources I'm talking about. Because in addition to the bar success, the academic success, and then, the financial success resources we have people that are working on policy, on doing research, talking about the grants that you were mentioning. All these things are going on all at one time with one vision in mind, and that's to empower the next generation of lawyers. And by making everything affordable and accessible to all, AccessLex mission will be fulfilled. So in addition to the academic success and bar success resources, in there you're going to find webinars that are free. 5 tips for success on the bar exam is just one example of a bar success webinar. Or how to prepare for the multi-state professional responsibility exam. That is one in the academic success realm. Those are all financial, and plus the financial webinars. And then we have worksheets and we have lessons. We have lessons if you're a pre-law student. We have a pre-law program that's being instituted this coming fall that's going to be free to member law schools if they decide they would like to use it. And that's getting you ready to actually enter law school. So there's all kinds of free programming that way. There's a scholarship data bank. It has over 800 vetted scholarships available to law students. That's on our AccessLex website, our scholarship data bank. We have the law loan calculator, which is huge. If you have undergraduate loans and then law school loans, to plan for that, you can actually put your data in there. You also have in there the JD to determine where do you want to go to law school. We have a program in there that you can look and figure out, okay, geographically, where would you like to go? What specialty area would you like to go, to narrow down your law school search. So we have a search engine that will just benefit you incredibly. I encourage all pre-law students to go to the accesslex.org website to find the resources for them, and all law students as well. That will lead you to everything else.
Yeah, that's a great start. And I love that there are resources for pre-law. I love the calculators, because that is one thing students want to just bury their heads in the sand. And of course, we've seen all the litigation around the loan forgiveness. It's only $10,000, which is like a drop in the bucket for most people who are graduated law school. And you see how hard it is to get that done. So if you're relying on that, then I would suggest that you go to this calculator and have a realistic idea of how much debt you'll be taking on, because that is a huge factor in where you go to law school and if you go, frankly, right? Because you do have to pay that back. As of now, you're required to pay all that back. There are programs later on to have loan forgiveness, but that's a 10-year investment for many people. And so, you really have to think, am I willing to do that? So that's a great resource. And I know I've seen things like JD Edge, and of course, more recently, Helix Bar Review, which is one of our sponsors for the class of 2023. Do you want to talk a little bit about those 2 new programs?
Absolutely. JD Edge is the program that I mentioned to you that is actually launching this fall for our member law schools. And it is essentially, it's going to be various modules, over 20 hours worth of lessons for incoming law students, to prepare them strategically to learn the skills that they need to go into law school day one with a foundation to build on it. So you're not going in as a first generation law student not knowing what you're looking for or what you're supposed to be doing, or just having this unrealistic expectation of what it's going to be like. You're going to get a little bit of that in the summer before you start law school. And again, that's a free resource for our member law schools. Also, now Helix Bar Review was developed to provide a scientific-based, comprehensive bar review course that was affordable and accessible for everyone. This is unheard of. Helix Bar Review is a because we're a nonprofit, it is at cost. At cost. And so you're getting a full comprehensive bar review course, 20 weeks worth of study, over 400 hours worth of study materials, everything that you need to be successful on the bar exam at cost. So that's why Helix was developed. And we have a couple of, supplemental programs that are available as well for students that may not be taking the Uniform Bar Exam or the California Bar Exam, and we're launching the Florida Bar Exam course for next year. So we have a lot to offer, and again, it's all at cost.
Oh, that's excellent. So, and I know, are there free MPRE resources or a study guide?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have a free MPRE course. That course consists of about 20 hours worth of studying to prepare for the MPRE. In addition, you get what we call the Helix attack outline, which is an incredible book that you will use to memorize and learn the ABA rules of professional conduct to prepare for that exam. And again, that's a free course.
Excellent. And that's a great way, I'm sure you would agree, being in this industry for over 20 years, to see if that particular company's program works with your study style and your schedule, right? You don't really know what you're getting into for those 12 intensive weeks of study without being exposed to it beforehand, because some places, are notorious for having these really long videos, and that doesn't work for a lot of students. I know Helix has these short little videos, and it has like a gamification built in to kind of motivate students, especially students of a younger generation that are, this is the TikTok generation, the social media, the YouTube shorts, the attention span is much shorter than when you and I graduated, right? I remember I had to go in person to the local law school, sit either watching a live stream video or someone, they're live and it's being streamed somewhere else, and just sit there and take notes for 4 hours. Like, students now have a really hard time doing that. Wouldn't you agree?
I absolutely agree. And that's what's so wonderful about the Helix program. It's based on all that scientific evidence and the learning science behind it. And so everything is done in short, build upon modules. So everything builds upon another. And the gamification is just another way to learn while having some fun. And again, that just breaks up the whole monotony of studying for the bar exam. You're not sitting in long lecture halls for 4 or 5 hours taking notes, because that doesn't keep you engaged with the material. And let's face it, the success on the bar exam is being able to get through the material, stay engaged with the material, learn the material for the exam. And the more that you do and keep engaged with the material that you have at hand, the better you're going to do on the bar exam. We found that just last year, every student that completed over 85% or more of our course, we had an over 90% pass rate across 46 jurisdictions. So again, it's keeping people engaged with the material to get through all the material necessary to be successful on the bar exam.
Wow, that is outstanding. 96%. I was looking up some of the bar.
It was 90%.
90%.
Or 85%. And then for those students that completed 100% of our course, we had a 98% pass rate. So that's pretty phenomenal.
It is.
That if you do the work, you're going to pass the bar exam.
Absolutely. And so I've seen some recent statistics about how, I know there was a recent paper about how it's reported and some, interesting things about that. But generally speaking, we're looking at places like Florida and California and, some of these big jurisdictions, New York, about 50% of people passing and, or 50 to 60% passing when they took it in February. So yeah, anything that can help raise your chances of passing the bar exam, we definitely want to take advantage of that. Well, thank you so much, Sherriee, for joining us today. We're going to share all the links for Helix Bar Review, AccessLex Institute, and also Sherrie's information so you can get in touch with her and stay in contact. And stay tuned for our next episode. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another great episode of Journey to Esquire, the podcast. Support, share, subscribe, And for more, visit www.journeytoesquire.com.